So, good morning, comrade, and a good morning, comrade, to you. Woo, so this is our first Twitch stream, which is weird because I'm trying to look into the camera. Let's see if I move a little bit. There we go. So I'm trying to look at the camera and not my TV, which is odd. Those of you listening to the podcast on audio, well, it's got to be real weird because I probably will say some things that don't make any sense when you're just listening to them, but I will try to keep y'all engaged as much as possible because you're my primary focus. All you audio listeners, you're the people that are blowing up the show, and you're also making the show happen. So we really appreciate that. So it's a house show tonight. Riding solo because everybody isn't out doing important things like going to DSA meetings and trying to change the world, or they're at band practice, or they're messaging me. What is this? No, don't want to hear this message. Completely turn all ringtones off. Always do that before you go on air live. That's a good rule of thumb. Anywho, so I figured I got some things I want to get off my chest. I got some things I want to talk about. Happy Juneteenth to everybody out there. If you don't know what Juneteenth is, do a Google search, I guess. Honestly, I can't act all high and mighty about this. I didn't know what Juneteenth was until maybe a decade ago, 15 years ago, something like that. But if you don't know, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, which ended slavery in America of African Americans, the last people to find out about this were slaves in Texas. So it was 2 years after the freeing of their people that they found out they were actually free. And it's some bullshit. So we celebrating some bullshit out here. What we do know for sure is that slavery happened here in America. America was built on slavery. This engine of capitalism could not run without slave labor. And human trafficking and slavery go on to this day. And to prove to you that this engine of capitalism and this country could not run without slave labor, you don't have to go any further than Trump's order to, well, it's not an order, but it's got some super plan that is going to get all the ICE goons to go around and round up, he said, 1 million illegal immigrants. Well, good luck with that. First of all, I mean, I don't want to get into the argument of there are no illegal people, because on this show, we take the hard stance that no one is illegal. There's no such thing as an illegal person. Immigration, when you break immigration law, you haven't even committed a criminal offense, you've committed a civil offense. If we held people to the same standards of civil offenses as we are holding these migrants, we would all be in jail. Everybody here has jaywalked. Everybody here has had a speeding ticket. So we're all criminals. But let's say this was logistically even possible, and that Donald Trump could snap his fingers, could Thanos all undocumented people, all migrants, all people just looking for refuge from countries in South and Central America, that through our drug war and other meddling, we've actually created the situations that these people are running from. But I feel that's for another show. That's for another program. But let's just imagine that he could do that. Deport them all tomorrow. Say goodbye to the American economy. So I hope you don't I hope you weren't a fan of, vegetables. I hope you weren't a fan of restaurants. I hope you weren't a fan of any industry that's propped up by underpaid migrant workers, because it would all be gone. And capitalism as we know it in this country would break down that same day. The reason why, this is speculation, a little conspiracy. The reason why you want to make it so hard on migrant workers trying to come to this country, and you want them in cages and you want them separated from your kids. The reason why you want that so bad is because you really just want to keep the ones that are already here. You want to make them afraid to speak up for themselves and to fight for the little rights that they do have as workers. So it's just another way for this country to disempower workers by doing that. They're not, because I'll give y'all a little secret, a little inside baseball. When I was a cop, when I was a sheriff deputy here in New Orleans, Louisiana, one of the things I totally remember in our academy, and I would love for any law enforcement agency, anybody who's connected with law enforcement, to tell me different, that one of the things we were taught about were factory raids. I forget the exact term that we used in police academy, but it might have been like document check or whatever. So the idea was we could go to a place of employment and we could demand that everybody there show their paperwork that they were legal workers in this country. Now, what always struck me was, okay, so we're allowed to do that. Why aren't we going after the people who are employing these people? See, because you understand that's the situation, is that we're allowed to enforce laws. We're really concerned about enforcing laws with people with no capital, no possessions, no land, no money, same as capital, but no power, really, powerless people. We're really into that. But what we're not into is enforcing those same laws on people, a business owner, somebody who owns that factory. We're not going to do that. Now, they might get fined. They might have to pay a little petty fine here or there. They might have to pay a little pittance. But the near slave labor, the near pittance of wages that they have to pay out to these people under the table, and knowing that they're a labor force that has no ability to organize or unionize because they're undocumented workers, they're quote unquote illegal people, is worth, they've already crunched the numbers. It's already worth way more than that person, than whatever fine they're gonna take on. 100%. They ain't worried about that in the slightest. So, happy Juneteenth, everybody. Happy day that at least some people broke the bonds of slavery finally in this country. But then after that, obviously, we had sharecropping and Jim Crow. Still have human trafficking. We still treat undocumented workers like garbage. We not only have improvements to make, we have mountains to climb. Something I want to talk about here. I just had a thought while I was at work. So I'm reading from Politico, and I've seen this on a couple different news sources today. Elizabeth Warren emerges as potential compromise nominee. Centrists who once said the senator would lead the party to ruin are coming around her as an alternative to Bernie Sanders. And my answer to that is, of course they are. Now, I have to preface this with, I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders in 2016. Went to the convention for him. I'm all in for Bernie. I want Bernie. Bernie's the best. Bernie's been the best for decades now. Warren is not that bad. And here's what I mean by that before I get jumped on by all my leftist buddies. If we spin the wheel and we push the Overton window and it doesn't go all the way to Bernie Sanders and the wheel stops on Elizabeth Warren, I'm okay with that. The key to this is, if this has happened, I'm not bailing on Bernie. Nobody should bail on Bernie. If anything, this should make you push for Bernie Sanders more, because Wall Street is shook. Wall Street is shook. Wall Street is scared. I've read reports that Wall Street moguls, Warren was the most dangerous candidate, and now they're looking at her as a compromise. She was the one that was most hated, because they know, they're already seeing it. Joe Biden is going to fall apart. We're already seeing this happen. Joe Biden's going to fall to the wayside. He's making gaffe after gaffe. The other day, he said something about Bernie should just do a physical revolution. If that's what he's about, which he distinctly has said he's never been about. It was the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And also, Joe, don't threaten me with a good time. But that ain't coming. Here's the deal, though. Now they've moved on to Warren is going to be the only person who can stop Bernie. Yes, Warren is squishy on things that I wish she was not squishy on. But what that does show is she's movable. We, the quote-unquote, we the people, we the polis, the proletariat, have to be the ones to drag Warren kicking and screaming to the left. First of all, if she is going to emerge as the compromise candidate and she does overtake Bernie, we have to get her, scream it to her at every opportunity. This pledge she has not to take money from corporations, from Wall Street and corporations in the primary, but she's open to taking it in the general. We have to shut that down immediately. We have to shut that down. That can't be. Everything that she's squishy on, she's soft on Medicare for all. We have to shut that down. We have to say, look, you have to be a damn near carbon copy clone of Bernie Sanders and his policies, or there's no hope for you. We're not going to vote for you. You're going to be Hillary Clinton 2.0. We have to make that very, very clear to her. See, the thing about Elizabeth Warren is her policies might scare Wall Street. But like good poker players, they're hedging their bets. And they're not hedging their bets. That's a blackjack analogy. Better analogy is they're always leaving themselves with outs. So they're like, look at it through these bankers' eyes. Trump is best case scenario for them. Trump is going to let them do whatever they want. Joe Biden would be second best case scenario. Joe Biden's a carbon copy of Trump. I mean, he's damn near Republican, but I think you know what I'm saying. Fiscally, financially, he's going to let them do whatever they want to do. Bernie is worst case scenario. Liz has come out hard on the banks, but she's squishy. Now, their bet is if they can push for Warren, worst case scenario, she wins and beats Trump. Then they can move her with their money. They can, because she's already pledged. She already said, I'll take money. I won't take money from Wall Street in the primary, but I will take money in the general. So they can use their capital and their money to move her in the positions that they want to move. And then best case scenario for them, I've already stated, is that Trump just wins in 2020. And by backing Warren, you're also backing the front runner who has the least chance of beating Trump. I'm not saying she can't beat Trump. I'm just saying that you look at the raw numbers right now, you look at the polling, she is behind in that, hypothetical, Bernie Sanders number 1, Joe Biden number 2, Warren number 3 to beat Trump. So I've been seeing in my Facebook feed all these people getting happy about this, that Warren's on a tear in Iowa and she's on a tear in the polls. And I've been saying, hey, cool down with that, because there's no reason to get excited about Warren. I get excited about Warren when I go to a fast food joint and I say, hey, can I get a Coke Zero? And they go, no, all we got is Diet. Elizabeth Warren is that Diet Coke. I don't hate it. I'll take it. But that Coke Zero, which is Bernie Sanders, is 100% better. Show notes, a little inside baseball. I was recording live here, and then we had a little audio problem where the audio kept echoing. I don't understand. So, to give you an idea what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about that zany, crazy guy Trump who keeps tweeting about staying on for more than 2 terms as president. It's almost like he's trying to rile people up. It's almost like he's trying to get some kind of weird reactionary revolution going in the streets to keep him in office so he doesn't have to face all the court cases that are going on in New York now, so he can try to stay his last couple years on this earth out of prison. It's almost like he's trying to do that, or maybe, LOL, he's just doing it for the lulz. But that's what I'm talking about here, and now back to it. Hold on, Robert. That's crazy conspiracy talk. You're talking like Alex Jones. What are you saying? That if Trump got impeached or he lost the election or even he wins the election and then in 8 years he wouldn't leave office? Well, let's lay down a good scenario of that, of why that might actually happen. The man has he has so much criminal activity trailing behind him. And we're not going to indict a sitting president for criminal activity. Like, we've already shown that's not going to happen. But the moment he leaves office, he's got New York State after him. This man might be saying, hey, I don't want to spend the last couple of years of my life in prison. So what if I just decide not to leave the White House? This is a thing that could happen. What I wanted to move on to about that is like the people who buy that kind of stuff. And in a weird, like, Law and Order society, like, where Law and Order completely breaks down, what would happen? I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. Because I've only lived in New Orleans for 6 years. And I moved here after Katrina. So what I found out through reading and just talking to people in my neighborhood and reading books and listening to podcasts and all kinds of things is that during Hurricane Katrina in one of the suburbs of New Orleans, when the police pulled out, government completely broke down. There was nothing. Like, there was no law and order, and literal armed gangs of white supremacists ordered all black and brown people in this suburb called Algiers. They gave them 24 hours to leave, or they'd leave their own homes and their own neighborhoods, or they'd be killed. And so you had white supremacist gangs that went around and murdered people, black and brown people, until anarchists and people from the Socialist Rifle Association in Texas showed up. And once they saw that people had armed citizens were there to protect those people, all those Klansmen and white supremacists actually backed off. There wasn't a firefight in the street or anything, but this definitely happened. It was completely underreported. And what you're seeing on the screen right now, for those of you who are actually watching this stream, it's a website called Listening to Katrina. It's theplacewithnoname.com. And what this is, it's a guy whose story who, when government completely broke down and he had to figure out how to survive in this city that I live in right now. It seems insane. You know, this is like some video game, like The Division type stuff. He had to figure out how to survive with nothing. And it's his whole story of what he had prepared, what you should prepare for, what you should have prepared for survival, for disaster preparedness. It's really weird. And when I say it's really weird, because I really cannot believe I live within literal walking distance of a place that was this is like out of a war zone. Like we can pretend. I guess the point is we can pretend and talk about these scenarios. We can talk about these scenarios of, what would happen if the government broke down? What would happen if there was no police? What would happen if no social services? We can theory craft all this stuff. This happened. This happened in this city already. So you can look at this city for an example of what would happen. And my point is, I'm not saying that y'all need to go out and buy guns. Like that's not where I'm at. Not everybody needs to have a gun. That's a personal decision. And I'm preaching to myself here as well. I live in this city and I need to follow this guy's advice and have a good plan for disaster preparedness. Because even if quote unquote shit never hits the fan and everything goes along hunky dory, like I hope it does, and we never have a situation where there's a second, I don't know, what do you want to talk about? A second civil war, a new American civil, whatever Alex Jones is peddling nowadays. There will be another hurricane. There will be flooding. It's going to happen. When it rains too hard here, my house, my street floods. I've got a little canoe so we can get up and down the street. Wherever you're hearing this right now, there's some kind of disaster. I don't know. Do you live on a fault line? Tornadoes? Hell, electrical power grid goes down. Anything. Climate change is real. As there's more hurricanes, more tornadoes, more wildfires, we all need to have this kind of stuff ready to go at a moment's notice. And we need to have people, we need to collaborate, and we need to have solidarity with our friends and our neighbors so we can have a place to bug out to. So we can have people bug out with us. Because when things break down, it's just going to be us. It's just going to be community. It's just going to be community-based solidarity. We're all we can depend on in a story. So, again, I would check out this website, theplacewithnoname.com. I would start wherever you live in the country or the world. I would follow this guy's advice, like I'm about to do, and get your shit together. And that's not out of fear. It's to have peace of mind, really. Because, again, I know that a storm is going to come here. I know that. There's some natural disaster that you are in range of, that you need to prepare for, especially if you have a family, which I'm about to get married. So it's weird, man. I feel like I'm responsible for somebody else. Like, obviously my wife is not a child, but it's weird when you have to think about other people. I've been a loner for so long, and now, through the changing of my politics and becoming involved in the left, it's weird that I know I have a group of people to depend on, and they in turn depend on me. It's a good feeling, but it just makes you feel, for somebody that has anxiety and PTSD like I do, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's really a lot to know that, man, like, let's say Hurricane Katrina 2 happens. I would probably tell my wife, pack the pets. It's going to get real bad here. And it's stuff that keeps me up at night. I would say you should go, but I'm not going, because I'm one of the people that can help my neighbors, help our neighbors, and that there's a book, and I can't think of the name. Let's Google it right now. I mean, we're on Black Flags and Windmills, Hope and Anarchy. So this book was written by Scott Crow, a guy who had an interview on with a podcast that a couple of friends of mine put me on. It's called It Could Happen Here. It's by a guy who he used to work for Cracked before that went under, and he was a legit journalist. My girlfriend hates when I say journo. He's a journalist who was in Iraq, and he saw a lot of similarities between Iraq and the civil wars with ISIS in those countries and the political climate here in the U.S. He did a podcast series called It Could Happen Here. I recommend listening to that. It's not scary. It's more of it's a very sober look at, like, again, don't think about this in terms of, oh, this is some kind of fear-mongering, no, like, think of it as disaster preparedness. But this guy was on there, and he talked about, this is a guy I learned about the Algiers murders, when white supremacists killed all the black and brown people in Algiers, and how they retook the streets block by block. They built food kitchens and aid stations, and the anarchists and the socialists ran this city until there was some kind of government order back, because there was nothing here. Like, there was no police, there was no military, it was lawless. So I'm going to read that book. I would recommend you reading that book. I haven't read it yet, but just off the strength of that interview I heard from him, it was pretty awesome. Also, something you should take into account is physical fitness. And I am not the most physically fit person. I am almost probably the oldest. I'm on Twitch. I'm probably the oldest person on Twitch right now. 37 years old. But no, the meme is true. A fascist did work out today. And you should be working out too. 5x5 weightlifting. You should be doing that. It's 5 sets of 5 with all the exercises you'll ever need. You should also be able to run a mile. You should also be able to carry things while you're running that mile. Again, in a disaster scenario, you need to have some level of physical fitness. I was in the Marine Corps, so let me tell you a little weird thing about the Marine Corps. If you look at all these old pictures of Marines, they're not these Arnold Schwarzenegger tough guys, like huge dudes who look like half man, half ape. They're these skinny guys who could carry their own body weight on their back, who didn't have to subsist on a ton of calories, who could survive with little or no, water or food for long periods of time. So, all you skinny guys out there in skinny jeans, well, here's hats off to you. You'll probably be the ones that are best off in a scenario where resources are limited. But yeah, just get your stuff together. Like, really think about this. Think about your family. Think about your friends. Think about what you would do in a scenario where you couldn't depend on anybody but your fellow comrades. And that's going to be the house show for this week. We'll see you on Tuesday. Will be the next show. Will be the show where everybody's on together. Again, we're on Twitch. We're everywhere you can download podcasts, including Google Podcasts and iTunes. Please write a review. Please subscribe. That really helps us out. Also, we have a Patreon that helps us to pay our server costs. Please help us out there any way you can. I really appreciate it. I'm putting together some really good rewards for the Patreon, so I can't wait to get that rolling for you guys. And again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Happy Juneteenth!